I feel like a good thing to think about when a player first gets into the game is how is your symbol set is designed. I think that's the most important thing that you should be concerned with. And when thinking about your symbols, you want to make sure your hierarchy is first and foremost. Your bonus symbols are easy to read. They're distinct from one another. Your mid symbols are nicely designed, and your low symbols, your royals or your fruit, are at the bottom, and they don't really impact anything or interfere with the rest of your symbol design. Going into the reels layout, you want to be able to make sure as soon as the player comes in that everything is readable and they know what they're rooting for. Another aspect of that is to see how they track when they spin. So you're going to have to worry about your reel speeds. You don't want them too slow. You don't want them too fast. You want them just right. You want that sweet spot so the player can track what's important. And it's really nice. I like the idea of designing all of your royals with one color. Still looking rich and beautiful, but one color to where they leave visual gaps in the reel. And what's important will track even better as they spin across. I think it's important also to have, within the first 3 minutes, potentially using a mid-win to give them a little bit of excitement, give them a little bit of payback, and then enhancing that with a bonus anticipation. Give them a taste of what the bonus is going to feel like when they get into it. So that way, within the first 3 minutes, they understand what they're rooting for, they can track their symbols, and they get a little bit of a taste of the excitement that's about to come when they do hit that jackpot or that bonus. When thinking about the UI of most slots, you're pretty set into a standard industry template. You got your 3x3 mechanicals, you got your 3x5, 4x5. You have a few different reel variations when it comes to your ways spins, but you're pretty set into it. There's really not too much complexity when it comes to slots. I don't think it's a wise idea to design games with a lot of complexity. Some of the best games I've ever played back when everything was land-based were some of your more simple games. You know, your RTP let the player feel like they're winning. You didn't need to go over the top with your bonuses, so players end up with bonus fatigue. You don't want to get too complex. I mean, the most complex you should get is potentially just a base game, a bonus, and maybe some jackpots. I mean, if it's too complex, it takes too long for the player to learn. So you're losing it. So a good idea is just the KISS rule, you know? Keep it simple. You know, it's interesting trying to find UI solutions for iGaming. In the mobile market, we would do A/B tests. And with that data, we're able to decide what direction to go. More theming, less theming, colors of buttons. You know, the data would speak for itself. iGaming, you don't have that. You have a lot of different jurisdictions and regulations you got to go through before that game gets released. So a good practice is to have the team or yourself go out, research the common denominator between each of the games, what games have similar features, bring those back and discuss what works best when designing this game. So there's a lot of games that are successful out there that you can go and research. Some that may have one of the features and another one that has the other feature, and you're going to potentially wireframe that out, see how it works with the different aspect ratios, and go from there. Remembering to focus in on symbols first. That is a primary objective. Now, I've taken a few different approaches that some leadership didn't agree with, but it also caused conflict when dealing with certain aspect ratios. So I'm a big proponent of sliding menus rather than dialogue pop-ups, things that don't interfere with your symbols and stay out of the way. As long as the UI does not interfere with your symbols or overlay the reels, I'm a big proponent of that, especially like hate overlaying the play button or even have jackpots overlay your symbols. You know, just try to keep everything off the screen. If I can hide it, I love to hide it. You know, if the player knows where to go and the UX is there and they know, okay, I can slide the jackpots off screen, I can slide them back on screen, I can hide the win meter because you're not always winning, but it would be nice to have a little win meter pop up here and there. I'm a big fan of that. Keeping the play button off to the left side or right side, depending on what hand you like to use. So yeah. As an art director, I think it's really important to have the faith of your stakeholders. A faith that they believe you're going to deliver a product that they're looking for. Allowing that to happen gives you an autonomy with the team to have a more direct and single focus on producing these products. You know, once you lose the faith in your stakeholders, you're going to have a little bit more feedback coming to your artists than you need, and that direct point of contact is lost. This can bloat your timeline for how you're producing the games. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to take into consideration the feedback from your stakeholders. Of course, there's always going to be that. But when they start stepping in and giving their feedback directly to your artists, that single point of contact is lost, and it can cause some issues with the team. So I believe, so I've seen. But I think some of my biggest successes are when my leadership or my stakeholders had faith in what I was producing for them. And I was able to be that single point of contact for my team, and they knew who they could go to directly to get what they needed. Something else that I like to do is I like to use a digital whiteboard. I prefer Miro, but FigJam is pretty good. It also works well with Figma. If you're doing a lot of UI and prototyping, you can just port from, FigJam to Figma and just go back and forth there. But I'm more familiar with Miro. So, and that allows us to utilize it for two specific goals. One is for mood boarding, and another one is for kind of design tracking, so conceptual tracking of the games. This allows us to not lose anything, say in Slack or Teams, where it gets lost in a thread, or buried in some folder on a server somewhere, or lost within Jira. I'm not against Jira, but I don't believe your iterations should be stored in Jira because it doesn't keep a good timeline of what has been created, especially when you get more than like 10. It sort of gets convoluted in there. So Jira is great for just throwing your final checked off assets in there and knowing that it's done and shipped. But I like utilizing Miro. It gives a nice transparency for me and the artist. It also helps me from interfering and asking for screenshots of the latest. I can just go directly into Miro if they're updating it daily, grab what I need, and put slides together to show to my stakeholders, to show where we're currently at and where potentially any hiccups could be in the future. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Another thing that I think is super important for every team is documentation and standards. I know a lot of teams say they do have these things, but the documentation and standards should be set up to where if there's no one around and say everyone leaves the company, someone can come in and pick up the documentation and know exactly how the games were set up and designed. So there should be a how, what, and why to the documentation and standards. So that has been very fundamental in my leadership with my teams, and having that has helped out with onboarding, taking from anywhere from like 6 months to a year at some places to a little less than a month. So good documentation will go a long way, and it also helps out when you don't have a swim buddy for the new person on the team. So documentation, transparency, and faith of leadership. I feel it's really great that iGamity is putting these talks together. It's really important to share this knowledge so that we can build a better iGaming experience for the players. I've been in situations where a lot of this stuff is either an epiphany that you figure out or heavily guarded from other art leadership. It's just kind of something you stumble into. So I feel that it's really great that iGamity is putting this out there for everybody. And it's really interesting to see how many different perspectives people have on this. Where I come from more of a foundational look at how these games are built. Others come from a more artistic, some come from more math driven. So it's very interesting that I can see one day everyone seeing a correlation or a similar thread of idea coming out of this, and we'll hit that sweet spot. So thank you for the team over there at iGamity for putting this together. I think this would be really helpful for everyone in the future.